From Courtney Cox's future love life to the reason why Neve Campbell abandoned the franchise.
Sounds about right. You ready for this? Never. Here we go.
Here are some things that fans of the Scream saga didn't know about, starting with Courtney Cox fell in love with her future husband on set. Yes, I think you know what I'm about to say. Gale Weathers and Deputy Dewey's love story was the only one that didn't end in tragedy, as it turns out. Courtney Cox and David Arquette didn't have to do much acting to fall in love.
Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you.
Deputy, it's okay.
What brings you to these parts?
Well, you just never know when or where a story will break.
Why, you ask? Because they started dating while filming, duh. The franchise changed their relationship in a way that would last, and when they got married after the second movie, they had to cut short their honeymoon to get back to work on Scream 3. But sadly, the couple broke up before the fourth movie. This reminds me, did you know Scream was inspired by real-life serial homicides in Florida? Kevin Williamson got the idea for the screenplay from a documentary he saw one night about serial killer Danny Harold Rowland. After sneaking into the apartments of 5 students, he killed them all. Later that night, Williamson came home to find a window open in his house that he was sure had been closed earlier. He spent the rest of the night with a knife in his hand and a friend on the phone while he searched the house in fear. And so, over the next 3 days, he wrote the first draft of the script and a plan for 2 more movies, which turned out to be a great blessing for all the Scream fans. So, moving on, let's talk about why Neve Campbell wasn't in Scream 6. Even though there were strong hints that one of our favorite characters, Sidney Prescott, would be in the 6th film, Ghostface won't get to fight her. But when Campbell was asked to be in it, the 2 companies, Spyglass and Paramount, couldn't come to an agreement that the actor felt was fair. She eventually told fans that she decided not to come back because they'd given her a low offer, and she thought that this didn't show how much she and her character had added to the franchise.
Holy shit, it's Ghostface!
Although one thing that completely shocked me was that Drew Barrymore almost played Sidney. Scream didn't want to be like the other horror movies, so they chose to cast bigger names. Barrymore read the script and asked the producers if she could play the lead role. She was quickly cast as Sidney, and her participation helped bring in other well-known actors. But oh boy, was she in high demand. She ran into a lot of scheduling problems and had to drop out of the film, but she didn't want to leave it altogether, so she agreed to play Casey Becker. This let her film her scenes in less than a week, and of course, since they'd lost a lead now, they saw Campbell's work on Party of 5, where she played an innocent character and thought about casting her. At first, she wasn't sure about taking the part, but since this was her first chance to be the main character, she couldn't say no, and whoosh, her career skyrocketed from that point on. This brings me to the next most shocking thing. Scream started originally as a one-act play. Kevin Williamson, who made Scream, told Comic Book that after he came up with the idea, he started writing the story as a one-act play. He said that he wrote the movie quickly, but what most people don't know is that he wrote it as a one-act play. It was just a young person talking to us on the phone. But could there be a murderer outside? That might explain why the first scene is such a long masterpiece. But after Williamson added more to the story, he ended up with a full-length movie script. In fact, he further added by saying that he hadn't had a job for a long time, and there was a point when he even considered making a short film out of it.
It started with my first, I wanted to write and make a living at it, and I was poor and I was starving, and I wanted to write a horror film because I thought that it would sell.
But when he decided to add more to it and turn it into a screenplay, he started taking it very seriously. This reminds me, the film's name was inspired by a Michael Jackson song. Yep, I'm not kidding. They first decided to name it Scary Movie before the Weinstein brothers changed it. Bob Weinstein mentioned in an interview that he didn't want it to sound like a joke, although someone at the Weinstein Company must have liked the idea of a funny funny scary movie called Scary Movie because it came out in 2000, not even a year after Scream. Ghostface was played funnily in Scary Movie, which was a horror parody. When Weinstein's brother heard the song Scream by Michael Jackson and Janet Jackson on the radio, he came up with the name Scream. Then Bob called his team and told them, "Guys, we have a title, Scream." But I've got to tell you, this next one had me laughing out loud. Drew Barrymore accidentally called the police multiple times while filming. Remember when Casey tries to call 911 several times during her scary first scene when Ghostface is following her? Well, on the set of the movie, the prop master forgot to unplug the landline. And yes, this led to Barrymore calling real 911 operators several times. So each time, she'd ring the phone, scream into it, and then hang up. When the worried police called back to check on the situation in the middle of a take, the crew suddenly knew what had happened.
Listen!
No, you listen, you little. You hang up on me again, I'll gut you like a fish, understand?
Moving on, it was super hard to convince Wes Craven to take the job. The studio wanted him to direct, but he was tired of making horror movies and wanted to try something new, and he turned down the job twice. In fact, at one point, George A. Romero, Sam Raimi, Robert Rodriguez, and Danny Boyle were all considered for the job, but they were all turned down because they thought the movie would be funny. After that, the studio still chose Craven because of his approach to the genre. He said, "You can't be funny when someone's dying." Instead, he tried to find humor in the tension between the scenes where people were killed.
Finds the gun, foils your plan, and saves the day. I like that ending.
So much convincing later, the man was finally drawn to the project for two reasons. One of them was that Drew Barrymore agreed to be in the movie.
Movie trivia. Or even give you a warm-up question.
Don't do this, I can't.
Name the killer in Halloween.
The other was a chance at meeting with an 11-year-old boy, one who told him that The Hills Have Eyes was his favorite movie, but he thought that Craven had become too soft in recent years. I mean, who would have thought, right? Speaking of, Ghostface's mask was discovered by accident. His costume was chosen on set, just like it is on Halloween. The costume was just called Ghost Mask Killer in the screenplay. Craven tried out ideas and worked with the costume department, but nothing stuck. That is, until Marianne Maddalena, the producer, saw a mask in a house where they were looking for a place to film the last scene. Craven liked it, so he made a deal with the company that made it, Fun Mask. Bob Weinstein wasn't as sure, and because of that, he thought about replacing Craven until he got some dallies from the first scene, which made him change his mind. So last but not least, let's talk about how the final scene took 21 nights to shoot. The last scene takes up a lot of the movie. It's 42 minutes long, and it took 21 nights to finish. The owners of the house where it was shot had both died within a month of each other, so it was free, and their kids were fine with it being rented out for the movie. The cast and crew said it was the longest night in the history of horror movies, and they made t-shirts that said, "I survived scene 118," and also made fun of it by calling it the longest night in horror history. So guys, these were all the things that fans of the Scream series never knew about.